So I've lost count of all the conversations that seem to start in pretty much the same way at the moment. Someone with a budget and a deadline leans in and says that business needs AI. Where exactly? Well, everywhere, of course. In the product, on the site, in the onboarding flow. And it's not that they've no idea of what they want. They usually arrive with something in mind. Trouble is, it's often a half-baked solution to a problem that may or may not exist. If you push back, then you become the difficult one, the blocker, the person who doesn't get it. Going along with it, well, you end up building a chatbot that nobody has asked for. Either ending isn't really much fun, so I've just stopped arguing. Now I do something that seems to work far better. I send the whole thing to the user. When someone hands me a shaky AI idea, I don't tell them it's shaky. That's a way to make enemies and lose friends. Instead, I say something like, "It's a really interesting idea. I think you might be onto something. But let's go away and test it with a few users so that we build it in the right way." Often that's enough. You sound keen and not obstructive, and the stakeholder feels heard. You've effectively quietly moved the decision out of the meeting room where the loudest voice wins and hands it to the only people whose opinions really count. But sometimes they won't budge. They're so sure that they're right that testing feels like a waste of time. And when that happens, I fall back on two tactics. First, I tend to ask a lot of questions. I throw a lot of very specific ones at them about how the thing should work, what happens in this case or that case. And before long, they start to struggle. And the moment that happens, I step in and suggest that it might be quicker to ask a few users than it is for us to work our way through all of these different things and make decisions about all this different stuff. And if that doesn't work, then I tend to talk about risk. If we build this without any testing, there's a real chance we go down a path that's wrong and we end up wasting the budget. So I ask whether they're happy to own that risk. And in my experience, nobody ever is. I mean, who wants to be responsible for something that's risky? And the moment they hesitate, then you've got your user research. If the idea is hollow, then your users will tell you, and you can be just as surprised as your client. No bruised ego, just evidence. And if the idea is solid, well, even better. You now know it's worth building. But validation isn't just a thumbs up or a thumbs down. The real prize is that you'll learn from those conversations. The same questions that will tell you whether to build will also tell you how to build. When you sit down with users, you're not just asking, would you use this? You're working out the shape of the thing. And in that situation, three questions tend to matter the most. First of all, how much control do users want? Ask people how much say they want over what the AI does on their behalf. Some will want it to be a set and forget type thing. They'll happily never see it again. For them, the best answer is an invisible solution. No interface, no buttons, no chat windows. The AI just gets on with the work in the background. And that problem quietly goes away. Others will want their hand on the wheel. They don't trust a black box making choices for them, and that's fair enough. That moment people want control, your invisible solution becomes a visible one, and you're going to need some kind of interface to design. But at least you'll know which camp you're in if you've actually asked people. A second question is, how do you want to see it? If it does need to be visible, the default everyone reaches for is a chatbot or text. That's usually what the client or stakeholder's talking about, but not necessarily what the user is asking for, and it's rarely a deliberate choice. They land on text because it's familiar, not because it's the best way of doing things. And this is exactly where asking the user really opens things up. Ask the user what they're actually trying to understand, because often a chart or a simple dashboard or a quick visual does in a glance what a paragraph would fumble. AI is getting genuinely good at generating this sort of thing on the fly, so there's no reason to settle for a wall of prose when a graph would do the job faster. And then finally, you need to be asking, how do you want to interact with it? And this is where people really begin to express their preferences. Most will maybe expect a conversation, type a question, wait, read an answer, type again. For plenty of tasks, that's fine, but it's often slower and more irritating than the alternatives. A few form fields can beat a lot of back and forth with a bot that keeps asking you for clarification. A dashboard can feel a more natural way to interact in a world where you're poking at data. Ask the user how they'd rather do it, and many will tell you a chat box was never the point. Notice what's happening here. You haven't had a single argument about whether AI belongs in the product. You've turned a turf war into research questions and come back with answers nobody can wave away. Maybe the project dies because users just don't care. Maybe it lives, but as a quiet background helper rather than the chatbot your client pictured. Either way, the decision was made by the people who have to live with it, not by whoever was the most confident in the room. That's a far stronger place to design for, and it's a much easier life than being the one that constantly says no.